Okay, chicken monkeys. It is Thursday. Thursday. Okay, so when we left off yesterday, the Peach and its travelers had passed through the cloud area safely and now saw a city below them with skyscrapers, which we decided was New York City. So now um, the next step is getting from up in the air down to the earth below. So James had the idea of having the centipede snip off a balloon at a time until they got down safely to the ground, which seems like a pretty decent plan, right? That's the way they slowly went up, and this is the way they can slowly go down. But if you know anything about stories, things don't always happen the way that they plan or that the characters plan or the way we plan. So, chapter 33. Far below them in the city of New York, something like pandemonium, that means utter craziness, was breaking out. A great round ball as big as a house had been sighted, hovering high up in the sky over the very center of Manhattan, and the cry had gone up that it was an enormous bomb sent over by another country to blow the whole city to smithereens. So think about this. Say you're in Westchester County or New York City or anywhere in your life, and you look up and you see a peach the size of a house. What are you going to think? You're not going to be like, oh, what a lovely peach. Isn't it great out? You're going to be like, OMG, is it Martians? Is it aliens? Are we getting invaded? And that's exactly what's going on in New York City. People are freaking out. They're like, it's a bomb. We're all going to die. Blah. Air raid sirens began wailing in every section. That's back in the old days, in like the times of the World War One and Two, when there was the fear that we were going to get invaded. These loud sirens are like, rear, rear, and it was people's. Basically, it was the way people knew to like go take cover and try and find an underground shelter. So these are going off, these air raid sirens. All radio and television programs were interrupted with announcements that the population must go down into their cellars immediately. 1 million people walking in the streets on their way to work looked up into the sky and saw the monster hovering above them and started running for the nearest subway entrance to take cover. Generals grabbed holds of telephones and shouted orders to everyone they could think of. The mayor of New York called up the president of the United States down in Washington, D.C. to ask him for help. And the president, who at that very moment was having breakfast in his pajamas, quickly pushed away his half finished plate of sugar crisps and started pressing buttons right and left to summon his admirals and his generals. And all the way across the vast stretch of America, in all the 50 states from Alaska to Florida, from Pennsylvania to Hawaii, the alarm was sounded and the word went out that the biggest bomb in the history of the world was hovering over New York City and that at any moment it might go off. And that's the end of chapter 33. Don't worry, I'm not going to stop. But that's kind of funny. That shows that Roald Dahl has a good sense of humor because he's imagining the president's in his pajamas eating breakfast. And he's not like, I would imagine the president would be eating like a healthy breakfast, like whole grain toast with yogurt and fruit. And Roald Dahl has him eating like some sugar junky cereal, which is kind of funny. Okay, chapter 34. Come on, centipede, bite through the first string, James ordered. The centipede took one of the silk strings between his teeth and bit through it. And once again, but not with an angry cloud man dangling from the end of the string this time, a single seagull came away from the rest of the flock and went flying off on its own. Bite another, James ordered. The centipede bit through another string. Why aren't we sinking? We are sinking. No, we're not. Don't forget the peach is a lot lighter now than when we started out, James told them. It lost an awful lot of juice when all those hailstones hit it in the night. Cut away 2 more seagulls, centipede. So wait, let's stop for a second. It took 502 seagulls to get them up in the air. Then they had to snip off one that had the angry cloud man. And so they just snipped off another. So now we're at, what, 500, I think? Cut away 2 more seagulls. So now we're at 498. Ah, that's better. Here we go. Now we really are sinking. Yes, this is perfect. Don't bite any more, centipede, or we'll sink too fast. Gently does it. Slowly the great peach began losing height, and the buildings and the streets below began coming closer and closer. Do you think we'll all get our pictures in the paper when we get down? The ladybug asked. My goodness! I've forgotten to polish my boots, the centipede said. Everyone must help me to polish my boots before we arrive. Oh, for heaven's sake, said the earthworm. Can't you ever stop thinking about. But he never finished his sentence, for suddenly, whooshed! They looked up and saw a huge four-engined airplane come shooting out of a nearby cloud and go whizzing past them not more than 20 feet over their heads. This was actually the regular early morning passenger plane coming into New York from Chicago, and as it went by, it sliced right through every single one of the silken strings. And immediately the seagulls broke away, and the enormous peach, having nothing to hold it up in the air any longer, went tumbling down the earth like a lump of lead. Help! Cried the centipede. Save us! Cried Miss Spider. We are lost! Cried the ladybug. This is the end! Cried the old green grasshopper. James! Cried the earthworm. Do something, James! Quickly, do something! I can't, said James. I'm sorry. Goodbye. Shut your eyes, everybody. It won't be long now. Wow. And throughout the story, James has been the one that has the ideas that get them out of trouble, and he's out of ideas. So they think they're gonna nicely, gently, softly float to the ground, but then the engine of that airplane goes whoosh and slices right through every single string. And here's a picture of it. There's the airplane. There's the strings coming off. OMG. So instead of, she's like, OMG. All right, I'm gonna read a couple more chapters. You're very, very lucky today. Chapter 35. Round and upside down went the peach as it plummeted toward the earth. Ooh, plummeted's a great way of saying falls. Plummeted. And they were all clinging desperately to the stem to save themselves from being flung into space. Faster and faster it fell, down and down and down, racing closer and closer to the houses and the streets below, where it would surely smash into a million pieces when it hit. And along all the other streets in the city, along Fifth Avenue and Madison Avenue, people who had not yet reached the underground shelters looked up and saw it coming. And they just stopped running and they stood there staring at it in a sort of stupor at what they thought was the biggest bomb in the world falling out of the sky onto their heads. A few women screamed. Others knelt down on the sidewalks and began praying aloud. Strong men turned to one another and said things like, I guess this is it, Joe. And goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. And for the next 30 seconds, the whole city held its breath, waiting for the end to come. Okay, stop for a second. If you were one of the pedestrians or the people walking on the streets of New York City and you saw this giant peach in the air, this peach that you don't know what it is. It's a round object. I'm not even sure if you can tell it's a peach. So it's in the air, and then all of a sudden, you see a plane comes through, and now this big giant thing is plummeting down towards the earth, towards you. What would you do? Because what we hear is that some people screamed, some people prayed, some people just were like, dude, nice knowing you. It's been nice. What would you do at that moment? Turn and talk to a plant, a sock, a friend. No, you shouldn't be with friends. A relative, an imaginary friend, your pet. What would you do if you were on the streets of New York City? Okay. Chapter 36. Goodbye, Ladybug, gasped James, clinging to the stem of the falling peach. Goodbye, Centipede. Goodbye, everybody. There were only a few seconds to go now, and it looked as though they were going to fall right in among all of the tallest buildings. James could see the skyscrapers rushing up to meet them at the most awful speed, and most of them had square flat tops, but the very tallest of them all had a top that tapered off into a large, sharp point, like an enormous silver needle sticking up into the sky. Many of you have been to this building that has what looks like an enormous silver needle sticking up into the sky. It's probably one of the most famous buildings in New York City. You know which one it is? Say it on three. 1, 2, 3. Empire State Building. And it was precisely onto the top of this needle that the peach fell. There was a squelch. The needle went in deep, and suddenly there was the giant peach, caught and spiked upon the very pinnacle of the Empire State Building. And you guys got bonus chapters, so I'm stopping there at the end of chapter 36. But you guys lucked out, man, because that was a lot of chapters. Mwah, mwah, mwah. Talk to you tomorrow. Bye bye.